What's up, Denver? Chris Lopez here, back with another deal analysis episode. This one will be a little bit different than a lot of the ones I'm doing recently. I've actually got Ben Einspahr back in the studio. You know Ben from some previous podcasts on his house hack in Arvada, and also he is one of the hosts of the House Hacking Mastermind group. And today we're going to be talking about Ben transitioning out of his Arvada house hack into a brand new house hack in Wheat Ridge. So we'll discuss how the transition went and the new numbers on his new build on Wheat Ridge. Ben, welcome back.
Chris, thank you for having me. I'm super pumped to be in the studios again, talking with you.
Yeah, this is always fun to talk numbers, and especially like when we talk like, hey, you bought it, you closed on, here's what we expect. Now you got a couple years underneath your belt and you're moving. So, to recap, you bought a house in Arvada, 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom main house, I believe, with a 1-1 basically mother-in-law suite above the garage.
Correct.
About the perfect layout for a house hack. You and your wife Allison have been there for what, 2.5 years?
We were there for about a year and a half.
Year and a half, okay.
Correct.
Okay. So year and a half, and while you live in the main house, you've been Airbnb-ing the mother-in-law suite
Correct.
up above the garage. And then you've done a great job of pivoting with that when COVID happened. You switched to medium-term rentals. So where I want to get some numbers with you and details is you pivoted to medium-term rental on there, and now you have moved out to your new property. So tell us about the pivot from a short-term rental to medium-term rental when COVID first hit about a year ago, and why that's changed your investing philosophy.
So when COVID hit, my wife and I looked at each other and were like, oh crap, our whole principles, our philosophy is based off of short-term rental, people traveling. Well, people aren't traveling, so the whole part of the game is adapting and seeing what we can do. And so that's when we really started looking into medium-term rentals. And medium-term rentals are anything over 30 days. And we started looking into Furnish Finder and Copa to try to get people in, because Furnish Finder is actually focused more towards traveling nurses. And everyone knows during COVID, there's a lot of traveling nurses. And so that really got us through 2020. I would say from April to September. In September, we opened it back up. But April, September, medium-term rentals saved our business. And during that process, we noticed that, okay, well, this is great. We're not doing laundry every night. This is great. We're not having to deal with the cleaner. We're not having constant turnover. We're having more professionals come in and live in our property that are more quiet and maybe sleep during the day and work at night. And it really fit my wife and I during that time. It fit us perfectly, and we couldn't have asked for anything better.
All right. And so give a frequency. So medium-term rental is every 1 to a few months having turnover?
Yeah, it depends on what they're looking for. The shortest term you can do is 30 days, but we've had some up to 4 to 5 months, and we've actually had people come last minute like, hey, can I stay a little bit longer? But we're really trying to keep it as a business and keep our occupancy and our occupancy as low as possible. So we have people lined up. So we have had to turn away a couple people, but all in all, we've had excellent experience with it. But short-term rental has its pluses as well.
What was your frequency and turnover for short-term rentals? Just on average, like per week or per month?
For short-term rentals, our 90% of the people that stayed were Thursday through Sunday. Those were the big days. And then the challenging part was for having some people would move out on Mondays as well, but the Tuesdays, Wednesdays were really challenging to fill. So we really looked at it at a whole market and what our competition was and seeing who was full, who was not. And so we really, to keep our high occupancy rate, I think we did an excellent job keeping our occupancy rate high, because that's key. And more occupancy, more foot traffic, more reviews. You get you get super hosts for Airbnb, but the more people that come in, you see it, and then you have less turnover. So I guess to answer your question, we did the math, and I think 2020 we averaged 89% occupancy rate, I believe. Don't quote me on that though.
Even with the pandemic.
In 2020 with a global pandemic.
So that 10% was probably, because for that first 6 or 8 weeks, everything just kind of hit pause. So that was probably a big part of your vacancy, right?
Correct. That was it was the 10% was mainly, I believe, March was a very tough one. And March I think we had a 50% occupancy rate, maybe 3 guests. And we're like, this isn't sustainable. What do we do? Let's take a step back, look at what we're trying to do as a whole, and see what works best for us right now, where we're at with our life. And so that's when we transitioned in March from short term to medium term. And then I believe October and November were really low. People just weren't traveling at all. So those were a little lower, but it's expected. You gotta, when you're running your numbers, plan for vacancy, plan for the worst case scenarios. Anything else is a cherry on top.
So a great point there for everyone to keep in mind is that it's always a matter of when, not if. When something goes not according to plan, you guys took a count of it, you pivoted, you had the right mindset, and you just went on to, hey, landscape change, what are the options? Great, this option looks like the best one, which is a medium-term rental. So fast forward, because back in February, you guys closed on the new place in Wheat Ridge.
Correct.
And so I want to back up a little bit before then, right at that time when you and Allison were planning on, buying the next place. I want to get hopefully both your guys' mindset and discussion on there, because you already lived through one house hack. You learned a lot. And then what were you hoping to accomplish in house hack number 2?
When we first started looking for house hack number 2, we were really just looking at single family. This was in November of 2020, late January, early November of 2021. And
wait, say that again. You said late January, early November.
Yeah. Sorry. Oh, I messed that up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm confused with your dates.
I just know. Okay, sorry. My fault. All right, January, February.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, thank you for correcting me. So that's when we were looking, and we were looking at single families, but the numbers just didn't make sense. A lot of them were already furnished, but we would have still had some repairs to do, and they're a little bit above our price range. And that's when we saw this townhouse that was for sale and it's been on the market for about a month. And the pictures weren't the best. It didn't really give the seller a good vision of the value that this property could have. And I was looking, I believe Preston was in Maui enjoying his time. And so we were working with your other teammate, Walker.
Yep.
And he showed us the property and we looked at it. And I remember it was the same exact feeling when we saw our property, our Arvada property, is you get this feel like this is it. You walk in the door and you're like, I already know I'm doing it, and you're already planning on what you're going to do. But I couldn't tell you we don't have any repairs. It's a new build. My wife loves the new builds because we don't have to deal with plumbing, electrical, landscaping, because it's a townhouse, and we couldn't have asked for a better second house hack property, and it just panned out, and we couldn't be more happy in where we're at right now with our personal life.
And so you're moving from the Arvada house, and something I'd like to bring up and talk about too is as the market has changed, your strategy has changed as well. Because you and Allison, in a month you're expecting your first baby.
We are.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And honestly, that is a family change like that comes into play when you're buying or living anywhere. And so how did you take the new family dynamic and kind of weigh, hey, here's how life is now, and here's what we expect life to be. How are you looking at this house hack through now that, hey, you're going to be a family rather than just a couple looking through this lens?
So that's a great question, Chris. Thank you. When we started looking in around December, Allison was already pregnant. So we knew that we needed to find the separation. One thing that was a key component to number 2 was privacy. Finding the different from income to privacy. And since we stabilized house hack number 1 and we are going to number 2, we could sacrifice a little bit of rental income for the privacy that we'd have, because we knew we would have a newborn, and we knew that we had to deal with that, and we didn't want Airbnb guests being loud in the middle of the night, waking us up. And our life was transitioning, so our business plan had to transition as well. And for a layout of our current place, it's a 3-level townhouse. The Airbnb that we have right now is on the first floor with a separate entrance, which works great. The second floor is just a common living area with the kitchen, very open, light and bright, which we love, new appliances, and the living area. Then you go to the third floor. The third floor is what really sold my wife, is two master bedrooms with walk-in closets and large bathrooms, just new, plenty of room. And we knew that it would make a great house hack while we're there. But what attracted me the most is I knew the potential when we move out. We'll have low CapEx for the first 5 to 7 years. I mean, we're not going to have a roof go out. We're not going to have AC or any issues. So we'll be able to build up our reserves. So when the time's ready for us, we can transition and stabilize number 2 and go to number 3.
And so when you bought this house hack number 2, your plan was to still be able to do medium or short-term rentals to offset your mortgage, but you needed more privacy with the growing family, right? Like those are kind of like some of the 2 main themes.
Correct. Those are Allison's 2 main things, which I listened to, and we went from there.
Well, I mean, it's a partnership. Like you have to, like you don't want one person being miserable and the other person, everyone has to agree. Otherwise, it causes issues, and that's a great thing that. I mean, you guys have done 12. You talk about, you figure it out, then you go out there and you find the right property to make it work for your situation. And that's something everyone has to keep in mind as you go out there and invest, whether they're house hacking or they're in buying investment properties. As you grow, as the market changes, it's always about changing, adapting with the market, and not saying, oh, well, here's my plan from 10 years ago. I'm going to keep doing this because that plan is now outdated. So before we get the numbers on the Wheat Ridge property, when you moved out of the Arvada property, how did you moved out? What is the rental situation like there?
So the rental.
Do you want to pull up the spreadsheets on here, or are you good?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we can pull it up.
And for those listening, we are going to discuss some numbers. They will be on the YouTube video and the blog post.
These actuals are actually based off of 2020, which is a pandemic. So the numbers. Our occupancy rate was higher. During a part of the year, what made this property great was we actually had half the year where my sister-in-law lived with us, and it was a win-win situation that worked great. We rented out a bedroom to her. She was able to save up for a new house. But just going through it, when we were living there, we were averaging about $1,700 a month in actual rental income, and when we transitioned, we stabilized it. We pivoted from short-term rental to medium-term rental because we don't have a washer and dryer in the mother-in-law suite, and so we didn't want to have to deal with the headache and handle laundry. So that's why we switched to medium-term rental, which I really, really love, and we're going to continue with our business plan of when we move from number 2 to number 3, because we're going to go from short-term rental to medium-term rental for house hack number 2 because it's right next to a hospital. But so the medium-term rental is $1,400 a month we're getting for the mother-in-law suite. If we were Airbnb in that, we'd maybe get $1,650 after cleaning expenses to $1,700. So it really doesn't move the needle too much. And here's the big thing, which is the icing on the cake, is we were able to find a family to move in to the main level that was okay with somewhat of a shared space, and they also signed a 2-year lease, and they were really focusing, which really sold us on, they want to find a place to grow and raise their family, because when I hear that, I think low turnover.
All right, so the numbers on here, you're getting about $1,400 a month in rent on the medium-term rental, and the main house is rented out at $2,100, right?
Correct.
All right.
So about $3,400 a month.
So $3,500 total a month.
Yep.
You're not paying for a property manager. You're putting away 8% in repairs and maintenance or 8% of rents for reserves, $24 a month in taxes, $24 a year in taxes, $1,700 a year in insurance, utilities.
When we were first running the numbers, we were assuming that electric, trash, all the utilities would be paid by the tenant, but we're Airbnb, we're renting out the top unit, so it's not fair to the tenants on the main level to pay for 100% of the utilities. So we keep the utilities in our name, and we think it's fair that we pay for 33% of the water, sewer, and electric, and they pay for 66% of it. So we keep it in our name. It may cause a little bit more work on my end on doing bills at the end of the month, but it's what made sense for us. And we pay for 100% of the internet. We try to get a better internet because more and more people seem to be working from home. But that's the biggest change on here is the utilities. We're covering about 33%.
And that's a very fair and pragmatic way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So utilities, your share is about $250 a year for water, sewer.
Yep.
$300 for trash, $600 for electric. So all very reasonable.
Yep.
And when you move out, about $10,000 a year. That sounds more right based on the numbers.
Yes.
So you move out, that's about $10,000 a year in cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
So you have very minimal maintenance with the long-term tenant on the main house. You're doing, 0 to 1 turnovers a month for the medium-term rental, which is not a huge amount of maintenance. But you're cash flowing, just under $1,000 a month.
Yes,
which is pretty darn good.
The numbers may not they work for us. They may not be the best on paper. They work for us. But going back to the maintenance, we're keeping the maintenance. It's an older home. I think it was built in 1964. I think it was built in 1964. And so we know there's going to be repairs coming up. We know that things are going to happen. So I'd rather assume it's going to be higher repairs than not. So we try to be very conservative and know that repairs are going to happen, and that someday I'm going to end up hiring out instead of doing all the repairs myself. So I just got to plan for worst case scenario.
So I think these numbers are phenomenal. Just because the fact that you bought this house a couple years ago for 5% down. You did do a refinance to lower the interest rate.
Correct.
At some point a year plus ago. But the numbers for, putting little money down and then living it for a year and a half, these are great numbers. The fact that you can still be a strong cash flow positive is a great testament to the way you've structured it and the way you've put your business plan together. So let's shift over to the Wheat Ridge.
Correct.
Tell us about the process of buying a new build versus buying, existing inventory. Because it is a different game out there. You buy an existing home off the MLS. That's one thing. You buy a new build. That's a different route. From your experience, did anything really jump out to you that you liked or, didn't fit with that you guys didn't like?
Overall, we really liked it because there's new appliances and everything. Everything's under a warranty. There were a few little hiccups that we did deal with the garage door, with some existing cracking in the grout. And there is, we're still working with, there is an HOA, but the HOA it's a small townhouse with 6 units. So now the HOA is built inside of it. So we manage our own HOA, which is very important to have. If you do have an HOA, you have to make sure that it's a financially strong HOA. So down the road, when things happen, you have those reserves. But overall, I would say closing. Every whether you close on a single family that was built in the 60s or a new townhome, they each have their own challenges and their own benefits. So it was overall pretty simple.
All right. So you guys went under contract on this, I think, right at the end of December. Actually, it was New Year's Eve, right?
Yes, we put an offer in on December 31st.
Yeah. So we went under contract on New Year's Eve, and you did a 5% down payment, conventional on here. What was the purchase price?
$525. But if you look at the numbers, the purchase price was $525. Since these were on the market for over 30 days, The seller was very interested and motivated to sell these condos because it was slowly becoming a stale listing. And so we got $7,500 in seller credit. And actually when we noticed right when we closed on our property, we noticed the remaining 4 boom ended up closing because I think it took away the stale listing, I would say.
The other thing is after we saw the layout of the first house, the first townhouse you got, I think we ended up having 3 other clients buying that community too.
That is correct.
Because we're like, damn, this is a good layout. And we see these townhomes like this once in a while. They've got the Airbnb or mother-in-law suites. So part of it too is we were like, oh, this looks good. Let's get other people on this complex as well.
Yes, it was great. We originally were looking at some of the smaller units, but not the middle units, but the middle units were a little smaller. They didn't have as many windows, and the studio apartment, which we Airbnb, was a little bit smaller. And then Walker was like, you know what? Let's just look at the end unit and see what it likes, or see what it looks like. And so we looked at it and we're like, wow, it's actually it adds a lot of value. I mean, there's more light, it's more light, bright, attractive, and a little bit more square footage. And so we ended up it was a little more expensive, but Walker and Preston were confident in what was best for us, and it made sense for us. And so we ended up actually going with the end unit, which worked out great.
And the end units usually sell for more than the interior units.
Absolutely.
And I think the end unit here is about $25,000 more than the
Correct.
interior unit. So
yes,
in the grand scheme, pretty small amount. Sometimes there'll be a much bigger difference, but I think it was the right call getting the end unit.
Did I say 2,500? When you asked how much more was it, did I actually say?
No, I said 25,000. Who said
okay,
25,000?
I apologize if I said 2,500 instead of 25,000 more.
So purchase price of $525.
Correct.
Seller credits of $7,500, and then you have $5,000 for additional repair costs. What are those repair costs for?
Airbnb furnishing.
Okay, so now actually with a new build, this was just to furnish the
This
downstairs.
was just furnishing an Airbnb.
Okay.
So if we dive into the numbers, we could have actually furnished this for about $2,000. However, we were looking long term and looking at our competition, thinking we could have potentially another 4 to 5 other Airbnbs next to us. How do we diversify ourselves? How do we set ourselves apart? And one of the many things we did is we thought it'd be really cool to have a Murphy bed. It saves room and it looks cool, and they're very nice, and that was just under $3,000. And so it was more expensive, but it made sense, and it was totally worth it. And so that's why our furnishing was so high. But for that little studio, everything else was about $2,000 from a mixture of Facebook Marketplace, Amazon, American Furniture American Warehouse, and Craigslist.
All right, so all in from down payment, acquisition cost, your seller credits, and furnishing the Airbnb, about $37,000. And you got a 30-year fixed at 3%. And so you and Allison are living, upstairs. And then what's the rental income situation like on the medium term, or on the rental right now?
On the Airbnb.
On the Airbnb. So I should have said medium term rental, but the short term rental downstairs.
We're averaging about $1,500 a month in rental income, and this is only looking at March and April. March we had a lower occupancy rate, and then April we were a lot higher, so we're averaging between the 2 months we are averaging about 75% occupancy rate with about $1,500 a month in Airbnb income, and we are projecting about $1,200. So we are exceeding that.
Oh, so you originally projected $1,200?
We projected it a lot less, but as we started, we had it very low at a nightly rate at about $75. Then we slowly pushed the weekends up to $85, $90, and now I think our weekends are at $108, and we're filling the weekends.
So knowing what you know now, do you think your income will stay about $1,500 a month, or do you think there's more upside there?
There is more room for growth, but the key is we're more interested in actually cash flow and high occupancy rate. So I'd rather have average nightly rate of $95 at 91% occupancy rate than 75% occupancy rate at $120 and it just makes more sense to us. So when we move out, I'm guessing it's going to be a little bit cheaper because we're going to a medium-term rental, which is just fine with us.
And so while you're still living there, you're obviously not going to pay for property management. You're putting away 5% for repairs and maintenance, which is probably high for townhomes, but you always want to plan for putting some money away. There is an HOA of $60 a month. What does an HOA cover?
HOA covers landscaping, mowing, snow removal, and like just the little things. There isn't that much landscaping or even grass, but we actually just this week we were talking about sharing a lot of it ourselves to try to save up some of the HOA costs and build up our reserves to have a healthy HOA.
Okay. So real estate tax is about $6,500 for the year. So this is one of the big differences between new builds and existing inventory. That tax bill is quite a bit higher than the Arvada house.
That for everyone listening, it was just a guess. I went on our escrow and found out what our escrow was. But I mean, when realistically they're assessing it as just an empty lot. They don't have any historical data to go off of. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and so everyone can understand that it's every 2 years in Colorado where they reassess property taxes. So a lot of times when you build townhomes, the first year or sometimes 2 years of property taxes is the value of when it was just a piece of dirt or an old dilapidated home or whatever it was. So the first year or two might be really low taxes, but then once they reassess it and there's actually a new existing structure on there, your taxes will go up. So that's definitely something a lot of times it is a little bit of a guessing game, but that's where you can look at some comps, and we also got some rules of thumb that we can go into details individually with people as well.
Yes, and that was 100%. I was trying to do my research, but that was just pulled off of what we're paying for tax and insurance currently right now, just to try to work backwards with the numbers.
Oh, so that's for your taxes and insurance.
Yes, yes, that is what I pulled off of one of our statements.
Oh, I got you. Okay, so your mortgage statement, about $6,500 total for the year for taxes and insurance.
Correct.
All right. Your water and sewer for the year is about $750. Trash, $150. Excel, $1,200 for the year. Internet, $65. That must be a month, right?
Correct. I should have probably done it.
So that should be about $600.
Yes.
That's not going to have a big impact on the numbers here.
And if you notice, for the utilities, look at how much cheaper they are for a new build. You got everything high efficiency, new plumbing for water. Utilities have been a lot less expensive.
And no yard to water, right?
What's up?
No yard to water?
No yard to water. When we were in our first one, I was a big person. I really took pride in our house and our lawn, and so we went a little high on the water, especially. Well, we've had a lot of water over the past month or so, but for 2020, we were definitely showing on a lot of water to keep our grass looking nice. Great curb appeal for the potential guests coming in. So
while you're living there, you're gonna have the income about $1,500 a month approximately. And then subtract out the expenses of mortgage payment, you're going to be living there for about $1,500 a month, all in, not just for above the mortgage, but for all the expenses on there. So when it comes down to the basics of, hey, we're living in a brand new place, we got a great Airbnb set up with our privacy. The fact that you're paying $1,500 a month to live there, is that a win or is that below what you wanted?
That is 100% a win in my book.
What were you hoping for, projecting before you ever went under contract on this place? Like, what did you guys want?
For a mortgage?
Or just also, I remember when you bought the Arvada house, you had, I think you wanted to like live for less than $1,000 a month. You know, from my perspective, one of the ways that you look at is, hey, how much can we reduce our living expenses by? And you set a benchmark.
Correct.
What was the benchmark for this property?
It's about right there. We're guessing actually, I think 1,800.
Okay.
But what we do is, I mean, we have our house hack number one, and that's its business of its own. We're not going to dabble into any of that income to help pay off our income. That's its own business of its own. So we keep that in its own in its own account. So this is just primarily this property. We are guessing 18 on what would be comfortable for us, and we're beating it. And why I say 18 is I'm sure a lot of people listening are will think, hey, I'm doing a house hack. I want to get my living expenses to zero. Yes, that's great, but it's what worked best for us. I mean, we talk about privacy versus income. We'll take it all day. It's better than it. At the end of the day, real estate is a very forgiving asset, and it works for us.
And the other way I look at it too is, I mean, $1,500 a month to live there. I mean, you can't go rent a place in this part of town in this quality for $1,500 a month. And that's great perspective, keep in mind. But what you said, hey, where you guys are for your investing goals, for your life situation, starting a family, like you get to balance a lot more now. And this is an absolute win.
Oh,
and
yes.
You're going to be here for a while, then you move out and you got a great asset that's going to be a big part of your real estate portfolio in the years to come.
Yes.
So, Ben, as we wrap this up, like what are the things you want to talk about or advice do you want to give other people making that transition from either, one property to the next, or also just house hacking while also, doing some family planning? So kind of two questions in there.
I know that's it. I could go on for, I'm trying to think of what would be best is going from number one to number two was a lot of work. And during the time, whenever you're in the middle of whatever it is, you think that, not for lack of a better word, the world's falling, but when you look back at it, it's not that bad. So during the time, all in, I'd say a week to 2 weeks, we had to clean our house hack, the main level of our house hack number one. We had to close on house hack number two. We had to furnish house hack number two for the Airbnb. And then we also had to fill house hack number one. I went over those really quickly. I hope I covered it all, but we had a lot of moving parts and a lot of different closing dates. And I was really focused on low turnover, and I may have cut the dates a little bit short, I guess, because there's a time where like, oh, we want to close this. I'm like, well, we can't close on this Friday. Or this Saturday, we have tenants moving on this Friday. So we had to work with it, and we did cut the timeline short. So for my advice is, if you're going from number one to number two, is when you're looking at filling it, you may sacrifice a little bit of income, but give yourself some space and some time to make sure you have a set closing date on your new property. And then it gives you time time to move out, get to your house like number two, and then bring tenants in maybe a week later. You're having that week of not any rental income, but it'll definitely save you the headache, as well as now that you're in house hack number two and in house hack number one, it's a business. It's more of a business mindset, and so you want to create systems and having a short-term rental while you're not living there it's a whole different ball game, because now you can't do the laundry. Your cleaner could do the laundry, but they'd have to go to a laundromat because you don't have laundry. So you have to figure out what works best for you, so you still enjoy it, so you don't burn yourself out. And you're now on house hack number two, and you don't even want to continue, and you're completely over it. So you have to enjoy the journey. If it sacrifices a little income, it's better than paying rent. Just enjoy it. There may be times where it's tough. You think why you're doing this, or you don't know how you're going to fill it if you're in the middle of a pandemic, but you figure it out. And one last thing, sorry, I'm going on a rant, is you mentioned teamwork with your partner. Why Alice and I work so great as a team is we set it as like a business. We each have our goals and our expectations of what each person's responsibility is. She is excellent with tenant communication and her whole organizing. So it doesn't leave the finger pointing of, hey, you were supposed to talk to them, or you were supposed
Yeah.
That is the biggest thing, because if you're tired and you're getting messages but it could lead to a lot of disagreements. But if you have your expectations up front, you know whose each role and responsibility is, it leaves out a lot of room. It just makes things easier. Because I always say, Allison always runs all the operations, so she's like the CEO, and I'm the CFO. I do all the financials, the month-end financials, and planning for big picture number 3, because when we have an idea and Alice and I talk about it, she is a rock star at executing and communicating and staying on top of things. So that's the biggest thing is if you're in it with a significant other, make sure you have your expectations of who's handling what, who's handling the cleaning, when a message comes in, who's responding, who's dealing with the cleaner, and so on and so forth. It's just very key to take a step back, and you two are owning a business. You're just not doing it for fun.
Ben, great advice. I appreciate coming back on the podcast, talking about the transitions, opening up. It's very helpful with a lot of the people in a similar situation have questions. So thank you. And also, what's a great way for people to reach out to you to network with you and connect with you?
The best way will just to either give me a phone call. I'll put my phone number on the show notes. You can either shoot me an email or give me a phone call. And I love networking. I mean, if for those you don't know, I'm the one of the hosts of the Masterminds podcast, and the whole principle of that was networking and growing your network in the Denver metro area. So I love talking with like-minded investors, and every time I talk with something, I learn something about myself more. You always learn from someone else. So reach out to me. My info will be in the show notes.
All right. So if you guys have any questions about here, check out the blog post for the screenshots, the spreadsheet. Reach out to Ben to network, get more details. And if you want to go out there and buy your next house hack, reach out to our team here at the Envision Advisors. This is what we do, help you go out there and figure out strategy, and then also figure out what's going on in the marketplace, get the two together, and find the right property for your next investment.